if you look at the word heart, the first few syllables in there create the word hear. So if we hear out to our heart, I think every one of us have a chance to reflect what we are good at.
Hi all, my name is Patricia Tan and I'm the Executive Recruiter for Sales and Marketing, Digital and Technology. Welcome to another episode of the Shift Podcast, where we chat with movers and shakers in the digital and technology industries.
Today, we have a very special guest. I call her the IoT Queen, and she's someone who I've known for almost 6 years. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rachel Ooi.
Hello, hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here, Rachel. You have no idea how much it means to me, and I think I'm really excited to talk about your book, UNSHAKEN, which we're going to talk about some of the key insights from the book which the audience can take away. Really, Rachel, you are not only a certified NLP practitioner, you are EMBA coach, transformation coach. You are the author of the international best-selling book UNSHAKEN. You are a mother. You are now assuming one of the biggest job, Chief Growth Officer of Dentsu International. How do you do all this?
Wow, that's a big description.
I practiced the introduction.
Yeah, look, the first thing I would say is by God's grace, I'm able to do this. First thing first, as you mentioned, I'm a mother of 2.
Yes.
My boy is 7 years old and my girl is 14 years old.
Wow.
And of course, with the love that they give to me together with my husband, I'm able to do this with great support.
Wow.
So that's the first thing. And as you witnessed me through across the years, maybe not 25 years, but at least for the past 6 years.
Past 6 years,
you have seen my journey through, right? And it's all about, I think it boils down to one thing, is what do you want to achieve in life? So to me, that's the purpose I have. And as I wrote, to unleash the superpowers I have.
Oh,
and you can do that too.
We're going to talk about that so much about the book. What motivated you to write the book? Share with the audience.
So the whole thing happens actually last year. Everyone was locked down. We can't go anywhere, right? And it has been a very challenging two years plus for many people, including myself. And I've learned to overcome it by inserting positive time in my life, positively charged, and having more normal life than, in fact, a better life for the past 2 years than for the past 25 years at work.
Yeah.
So when I have the best life to live myself,
wow,
then I have a settled heart to start thinking about what's going on in the world. How about the other people? I see a shift, right? And that's the whole thing about your shift podcast.
Absolutely.
From the physical to digital.
Yeah.
And with my 25 years of experience and with my gift, one of my superpowers is envisioning. So in a spiritual way, it's kind of a prophecy. I don't know where I get that superpower from, but I think it's born within me.
I'm having goosebumps hearing that.
It's born within me. I have that. And it's scientific, right? It's validated by Gallup's Strength Finder as well, futuristic, strategic, and that's kind of
superpower.
Yeah, envisioning, seeing the future. And I thought it's a great time for me to reflect and paint a picture for the next generation of leaders, especially Gen Z. I'm Gen X, of course. You too.
Likewise.
The second thing is, as you introduced me as, I'm also an EMBA mentor and coach. So these are C-suites and directors level. So when I coached them and mentored them for the past 2 years as well, during pandemic time, I realized many of them actually going through uncertainties as well. So this is a valid question to address.
Yeah.
So that's a second trigger.
Wow.
Of course, the third trigger is my love for my kids. I'm trying to be selfish here as well, right? So they are Gen Z, and I do see, I am worried for how are they going to survive in their time in 10 or 20 years.
And cope with the
different world as we are aware right now of the shift. So out of a mother's love, there it goes and born. The book of UNSHAKEN within 30 days last year. November.
Within 30 days. Let's talk about superpower, right? What exactly is superpower? And is superpower something that's innate or is something that you can acquire intentionally?
So first thing first, I do believe everyone is uniquely made, fearfully and beautifully and wonderfully made. Your
Wow.
life, my life. I think the superpower first thing has got to come from innate, but it can be built and expound on with the multipliers.
So everyone has superpower.
I think so too.
Wow.
So if
Okay.
we learn to quiet our heart,
Okay.
and that's important, right? If you look at the word heart, the first few syllables in there create the word hear. So if we hear out to our heart, I think every one of us have a chance to reflect what we are good
What
at.
we have.
But I think everyone can change the world in a different way that's uniquely made accustomed to your strength or what you're good at. It can be something you're born with that's good at. Some people are just good with music and it's just natural and they're brilliant at it.
And that, would you say, is more talent? Right?
Yeah.
It's born with it. Certain people just have that appreciation or like you say, music talent or art talent and all that. But is superpower something that it's more, say, characteristic, personality? Can that be superpower as well?
Yeah, so that can be added onto it. Right? So
Okay.
there are raw superpowers that's
Okay.
within us, that's talent. And raw superpower can be added on if we expound on it, being our strength. It's not just talent. And some of us are monetizing our work with strength, but not necessarily our raw talent. But if this combined together, added on with a value component, that is strong superpowers.
Can you cite an example?
For example, a born musician may not be so good in reading the scripts and playing, but because of the music inclination that he or she has, with the training that becomes a strength. But a musician with a value system with joy to entertain the crowd, naturally the person become a super performer with his music skill set. So that's a superpower. I'll cite another example as myself because that's more real. So let's say I know that my talent is sensing and visioning, which I shared. And with that, I have my job, my career built on that initially as a strategist. And over time, I built on it with data capability, that's scientific
Data
validations.
insights,
Yeah, so with the raw talent added on as strength
Yeah.
and with the value that I have to serve for a purpose, like now I'm writing a book of UNSHAKEN, is to bring purpose and impact to others.
But how do you discover your superpower, Rachel? Like for all audience out there, how to discover our superpower? I think that's something, the burning question because when I read your book, I'm like, yeah, but what is my superpower?
Yes.
Is it talking? Like, what exactly, how do audience discover superpowers?
So if you look at your parents, right? So I think I won't blame the education system, but because of how we are trained to pursue our interests, we sometimes overlook the superpower we have. Anything that we enjoy doing, and we know that we do it well and with ease. And when we do it, we know that others enjoy us as well. That's a superpower. It's very natural. So if I'm so interested in writing a book, which I didn't know, that's a new superpower I encounter and uncover last year.
I see.
Because I never dreamed of being an author, right?
Yeah, I think I like that what you say is about having the innate and you can build it to a different level of magnitude and together with values, it can go a lot more wider and to make a, like what you mentioned earlier, it can be a day-to-day kind of thing. And I think, but it's easier said than done, Rachel.
No, because we are cultivated in a different system.
Correct. And on that, do you think it has anything to do with mindset? And that's where your book mentioned about 3 types of mindsets. You have fixed mindset, you have growth mindset, and you have pivotal mindset. And that's where I wanted to find out, like, what are the key differences, and then when do we apply? Yeah.
So definitely it takes a growth mindset, at least, if not pivotal, for one to be able to unleash your superpowers. Because superpower is about growth, right? how we
Yes.
can
Yes.
expound on our growth beyond and above the raw talent we have or the raw strength we started with.
Yeah.
So this is important. Now, fixed mindset is someone who fixated on something they're comfortable in their comfort zone, right? Whatever they're
Right.
doing very well already,
Right.
they're just enjoying doing that for the next 25, 30 years.
Right.
Now, with that mindset of this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm going to continue doing, it doesn't allow the stretching of boundary and comfort zone to even expound on the superpowers that's innate, that's
Okay.
raw, that they may not know.
I see. So in order to get to uncover the superpower, it's important to have growth mindset and pivotal mindset.
Absolutely. Growth mindset, I think most of us are kind of educated today to know what growth mindset is. The difference between growth mindset and pivotal mindset is pivotal mindset is always going with time. So if you heard about the statement about right time doing the right thing
Yes. Yes. Right time, right place, right thing.
and in the right season, if you
Yes.
look through the whole history, you get to see leaders that's not just having growth mindset, but they have pivotal mindset, especially for those who change history. Like Winston Churchill. As you know, I'm an NLP practitioner.
Yes.
It has to do a lot with neuroplasticity that we have.
Wow.
That's only lately discovered for the past 10 years that we can actually stretch that.
Right.
So anything that goes through our mind as a mindset, it will translate to our heart as a willfulness, decisiveness, determination to do something. And our being will align with it where we want to go.
Right. But if I apply pivotal mindset and growth mindset in workplace for talent out there, how do we apply the pivotal, given that, there's so many different career professional out there? How do we apply the pivotal mindset there?
That's a $1 million
Another $1 million question,
yes,
I know.
Because in fact, anyone that I hire from now forward, or even anyone that's looking to build the leadership team, no longer of the days of thinking just about growth mindset leaders. This is the time for pivotal mindset leaders to strengthen themselves who they can be and arise. Why I say that? Because if you look at what's happening right now, it's not just pandemic anymore.
Yes.
The world is going crazy.
Crazy. I know.
It's like crisis after crisis. Now we have inflation. Potentially, we might have stagnation at the same time, a rising of unemployment, and not mentioning what my book was emphasizing around the gaps that's widening between the machines, technology, digital, AI, and human capabilities.
Yeah.
So we are at the crux, a juncture, or an edge of the shift. Back to your very relevant podcast, of the shift from the old world system to the new world system. Now, to be successful in that, leading the shift and thrive in it, that takes pivotal mindset.
Wow. The way you say it, in my mind, I was literally just reflecting like, did I actually apply, or have I ever applied a growth mindset? Have I actually applied a pivotal mindset? So growth mindset is the fundamental, like a basic.
Yes, else we'll become irrelevant where the world is moving, where the world is changing, especially with technology, with digital, and the Gen Z stepping up very differently in their world with metaverse and whatnot.
So true.
So we still stick on how we are trained with the education system and not learning to grow beyond. With the growth mindset, we are not going to be relevant. And a lot of people like us at our age probably already struggling.
Yes.
If you're not catching it fast enough to, let alone to lead the next generation.
It is so nerve-wracking, even hearing that, we are like in the in-between, like it's either you left behind or you have the intentional mindset to then switch over to this side, and hopefully you grow and you progress and all that. But how do people apply to, and that's something how does one know how much growth? Like, I won't know. I mean, a lot of people will say, yeah, I have a growth mindset. Is your growth mindset more than mine? Is it enough? This again, like all this, right? Like I feel that sometimes when I have this conversation with my husband, with my friends, I say, how much growth can we accommodate? And when do we know, do we do this enough?
Yeah, so I think over time, it's like muscles, it's like exercise, right? The more you train it, the more it becomes habitual, it becomes natural and part of your lifestyle.
Right.
So having growth mindset is like that.
How to flex that every day?
Yes. Now, here the key word is curiosity.
Right.
If you want to acquire new skill sets, you're interested, and you want to find out something, at least you know that you're in a growth mindset.
Right.
Because there are people who are not curious.
Right.
Yes.
And that usually are people who are more complacent and fixed mindset. Is that what we're saying?
And they're very comfortable with their own world, with their own world, with the professional, which is nothing wrong with that.
Okay. So on that, to move on, the world is scary, really, Rachel. And I think that's also another purpose why I decided to launch this platform, is to enable the audience to gain excellent insights from leaders like yourself, to learning, what can they prepare themselves better for the future, as much as for the Gen Z, but it's also for people who are probably at a mid-level management. And my question here is on behalf of them, is that, for example, traditional marketeers, traditional commercial people, traditional finance, traditional tech, if they're at a level where they're mid-level, senior manager, how do they ensure, or what can they do to ensure that they do not get left behind with this shift of the world that is moving into? Because obviously they are not too senior, they're not too junior, they're at the level where they are stuck in between.
I understand.
What would be your advice for them in mindset shift? Yeah.
I think the first thing to think about is do not restrain where they are good at today. It's important to be good at their craft today, but at the same time, open themselves for opportunity that they can double up themselves to reskill and upskill.
Got it.
So again, growth mindset come to picture, right?
Awesome.
So once we do that, then we open up the doors. And I do believe the world of the future of work is not going to be one job, full-time job, and that's how we survive. It's going to be very skill set based, competencies based. So therefore, acquiring new skills that's adjacent to current or close to what you're seeing that can value add based on their current, that will be the easiest, most immediate next step anyone can make, and it should be easy to make.
Okay. So if a traditional marketeer, knowing that the new skills out there that's required is digital, growth marketing, etc., but their current role don't really require them to do that. So does that mean applying a curiosity, growth mindset would be learning, getting out of the comfort zone? And I think that is key, right?
Let me explain and illustrate that, because I'm actually in the process of writing a Forbes article.
Oh, wow.
To reframe.
Where do you have the time, Rachel?
At night when my kids go to sleep.
Okay. I watch Netflix, but yeah, let's leave it as that. No, I'm just kidding. No.
So that article really emphasized how can CMO playing a different role, because we know that
good question.
In the past, CMOs are very focused on branding, PR, communications. Now, what's apparent today for tomorrow is we know that growth is a key topic.
Yes.
Digital is the way to go, because we are just in between generation, and from now forward, everything is digital. And we know sustainability is the language of the next generation, our current leaders. You would be silly not building on this and learning the skills within the CMO context in reframe for success.
Right.
So how can a CMO or any marketer do that? First thing first, get involved. Start thinking, how can a company you work for can grow in conjunction with the digital channels that's happening? Is D2C, direct consumer, a better way to promote the products and services? So question is, because if someone is curious enough,
that's a very good word,
aware enough, and deliberately don't want to be left behind and start thinking forward.
Me sitting here doing this podcast is acquiring skill set. Because I'm thinking I need to do something, right? Interviewing skills. I want to practice, and I thought, what's the best way of doing that? And at the same time, letting others to learn from the session. is to do this.
Yeah, Patricia, you remember a few years when we met? I don't think this is the context that we
Not
set
at
in.
all. Which is why, the rest who don't know, I actually saw on LinkedIn that Rachel wrote a book. It just prompted me to say, that's it. I'm calling her. I was just like, I was actually exploring the ideas of doing podcast. You were like, Patricia, I'm in. I was like, that's it. All stars are aligned. That's it. One more thing, Rachel, in your book, you touch a lot on growth Trinity framework. Can we talk about that in simplicity so that people understand, and how do we apply to day to day? That would really be helpful.
So the growth Trinity model, for everyone's information, is basically 3 parts of it. That's why I call a Trinity.
Okay.
So the first part of it is the aura. So how do people feel and see you when you meet them? So the aura is the first part, and that's growth potential for your aura. You can actually upgrade your aura with playing at different realm. That's the second portion of the growth Trinity model, the realm. And thirdly, that's I kind of touch on that a little bit about unleashing your superpowers with the purpose. Let me start with the first. Now, when we talk about aura, there are 3 elements of it that's very profound, which we touched on it already with superpower earlier. The first portion of it is the talent that you're born with, and then the strength that you have, and the value that help you to do really well, because your value is your aura multiplier. Some people struggle in the job they have. Like, for example, a very homey father who loves to spend time with the kids will struggle with a traveling job, obviously. So anyone who can start thinking and reflecting, and it's a good reset time right now, about how to optimize the aura, that's the first step. What's more interesting is we can really, now the whole thinking of the second part of the realm that I talked about, it all comes to me when I acquired my new superpower around NLP. The neuroplasticity flexing of it. So let me explain the 4 levels of the realm. The first level is human intelligence. It's how we are educated in our education system today. And some of us are already aware that our education system today is actually dated. And that's where AI can actually replace us very easily.
I see.
Because it's human intelligence, it's logical, it's left brain oriented.
Which can replace.
So, and that's why the people, you're fearful of losing a job. Now, let me explain the second level. That's a whole brain intelligence that also maximize our subconsciousness and our right brain function. That's where we can actually build onto our talent and be a bit more right-mindedness with the heart we have, with who we are. So people who can actually move, that's why in a leadership forum, we're often asked to be trained around emotional intelligence, agility, intelligence, and all the others. That's really right brain function, right? Now, the third level, that's the neuroplasticity intelligence. That's newly discovered for the past 10 years only.
Yeah.
That's when being human, that's why if you hear about people saying that today a genius only function at 5% of who human can be, of productivity and brilliance. So imagine we got 95% to go.
So true.
That's neuroplasticity in intelligence and spiritual intelligence. When I mention spiritual, it doesn't mean religion.
Yeah.
It means what you believe in.
Belief system.
Belief system, which tie very closely with your values. But that's where, with experience and connectivity, collective intelligence, you have the wisdom.
Yeah.
So that's a realm, just like software. Point solution can't do really well unless they're plugged into the platform and ecosystem. They're able to upgrade and connect all the networks together. Yeah. So as AI does that,
we have to do that
we
too.
can do that too and grow exponentially and not linearly like how we are growing today. Right?
Yeah.
So the third trinity of the superpower is really the purpose. There are people who feel regretted at the last breath of their life, not serving what they think they're meant to serve in life.
Oh, wow.
So the purpose, and good enough as Gen Z today, they already start thinking what their purpose is in life, because the Gen Z generation is not like our generation or father's generation. Survival, to eat and survive is a fundamental. Yeah. Now they have gone past that. right?
Yeah.
So purpose is going to help to direct our aura and having the hunger to grow at a different realm to serve the purpose. And that will maximize and that will optimize who Rachel is meant to be, who Patricia is meant to be in your whole being. So how do we do that? I think today we are kind of constrained to just doing a job.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, doing a job with what we are trained for. Maybe it's our university degree. I'm trained for accounting. But there are a lot of parts of us in life that we enjoy doing. We have not had chance to expound. So the short answer to your question is try out new things that someone enjoy doing. In fact, this is going to help in the whole mental wellness.
Absolutely.
And people are very uncertain and shaken. It's because their perspective of life is limited to
what they know,
what they choose to focus at.
Yeah.
The moment they allow themselves to open up and try new things, not just only to grow, but that set themselves towards a potential purpose that they might serve. And that gives energy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What about the book touches a lot on the identity, psychological safety, and sound mind. Every one of us, whether they share it or they say it or not, they are actually anxious. How to be unshaken, pretty much. You wrote a lot about psychological, really understand who your identity, what your identity, and having that framework of the growth, then you can be unshaken. But how else and what else?
Yeah, so to start with, that's a very deep question.
It is.
I find all ways to address this because I find that that's an area if we know who we want to be and who we are today, we can work towards at least the right direction, even though we're all human and we have a job. So identity, a lot of us come from, I'm very blessed. I come from a very whole family. Let me start there. But I do come across people I coach and people I see that's close, either come from broken family. And today it's very common.
Very.
And therefore we have hurt people everywhere. And all of us got to come to a point where we are able to confront who we are deep within, then we're able to grow. So let me start from knowing what you're good at, what hurts you, what you enjoy. Now, this is so important because in a physical world already, today, like for example, we have lots of uncertainty. And by the way, uncertainty is actually the root to anxiety. More importantly, a lot of mental challenges actually comes from the heart first, not able to confront who they are, the brokenness, and they're not healed from it, right, from the past.
So true.
And we are not active. Some of us are not active. I was active. I was trying to spend reflective time as well, but I'm aware some are not active. And with a whole perspective, just zoom onto that. The whole identity built on a career, the whole identity built on a job, or the wealth they have, or someone they love and they passed away, the whole identity crumble. So identity got to come from inside, cannot be dependent on something else.
Right.
So until we can settle who we are and be very honest with ourselves, that's the first step of identity.
But is there any exercise, Rachel, can uncover the who we are? Like we mentioned, identity is tagged to work, annual salary, the house you live, the car you drive.
Yes.
But how do we be very truthful? Or could it be meditation?
Yeah, so meditation is one way, at least because the moment we settle down our heart, meditation is not all about mind, right? It's the heart as well. So the moment we settle ourselves down, be very truthful who we are.
Yeah.
I think that's a very simple way of discovering who we are.
Okay.
It's the honesty.
Honestly, be honest to yourself.
The honesty with the time and space. Meditation is just an exercise, right? But it's really the time and space, being honest who we are and what we are good at, what we enjoy, what we love in life. What's the potential journey for purpose that we feel we belong? So these are very truthful questions that all of us could, including myself, I'm still learning, right, towards my purpose.
Wow.
Writing a book is just the first step.
So it's more of that identity, maturity, being psychologically like very sound and to really grow from there and to be unshaken, right? And so you can kind of be more confident in the future.
That's
about
right.
The future.
That's right. So see ourselves as, if you look at the book, right, that's a tree there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I'm trying to call for is the tree will be unshaken if it is deeply rooted.
Wow.
So it's all coming back to the rooting, who we are inside, then being entertained by the jobs we have, salary we have, the activities we have, things we own, deep within what makes us happy and what makes us fulfill with the right direction and purpose.
So does
Easy
that mean,
question.
Rachel, like behaviors and attitudes? Let's talk about that too.
Sure.
I think among the talent, something that I want to shed some light in that. What are some of the attitudes and behaviors you reckon should adopt in order not to be left behind?
Now, let's talk about attitude first.
Yes.
Because attitude drives behavior.
Wow.
And attitudes is always a product of the mindset and also what's in the heart. You can tell from candidates when they are really hungry
Yes.
because it's coming from inside, right? And then they have a positive mindset. Naturally, that gives birth to great attitude. So having the right attitude, again, is back to perspective and mindset. Because perspective is where it's driving the behavior. For example, if I'm in a very toxic working environment, naturally I have a perception about certain people and certain things. And that gives me a perspective. Therefore, I respond differently with the behavior, which can
May
be
not
toxic.
necessarily your true self.
That's right. Can be toxic, which is not my intent. Yeah. And I think many of us are stuck in the working environment
Absolutely.
as such, right? So some people behave differently because of the environment they're in, not necessarily their raw attitude. Therefore, the companies or where we work for, the culture, the ambience, the people that we work with is so important. And today is a different world that we live like before. Because today, I think, especially the next generation, we do have a choice to decide, as long as our identity is not tied to salary, position,
Well
we
said.
always have choice
Well said.
to groom ourselves in a better environment to be who we want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this, Rachel. Like, now that we talk about the attitude and behaviors, if I were to ask you in 5 years, 10 years down the road, what kind of skill sets will be required and what would be the advice that you would give to the audience apart from the positive attitude and behavior and being rooted, the tree, what would that be?
Yeah, so that's one part of the growth trinity I mentioned earlier that needs to be applied on. It's actually a digital genesis future, which in my book, that particular chapter, talk about how digital genesis look like in that. And it doesn't just turn overnight. It has been shaping for the past 25 years as long as I've been seeing.
That's true.
So anything that happens doesn't always just happen overnight.
Yeah.
It has got leading indicators.
Yeah.
So if we're following the leading indicators towards digital genesis, and metaverse is something that's so obvious everyone talks about, right? But it would be silly for me to say everyone become metaverse engineers. As long as we are applying our skill sets and growing in the direction of digital, if you're not digital attuned today, get on to that. That's already in process for the past 20 years at least.
So true.
Yeah. So digital, sustainability, because the world is going through crisis. If anyone can solve the sustainable development goals problems, you won't be left behind.
Wow.
So
This is real wisdom. I mean, this is something that audience should take away because this is the fact. And I think you just amplify and put it in this, category where it's digital, sustainability, all this, you won't be left behind, at least in the next 10 years.
yeah, so I've called that out as the turbo twin of growth engine or growth accelerators as digital and sustainability.
Yeah.
And the next skill sets that I think everyone can start to embrace is any new business model that brings a new market for growth. Yeah, so
Right.
because that gives a new market expansion or new demand expansion, we never know until we test it out because we're really transiting between the physical and digital right now.
Yeah.
And the digital will equip us with the assets and skill sets we need. Sustainability, the ESG context, the environmental,
Yeah.
the social, which are all the problems that we are encountered and facing today, right? And the governance.
That's
governance in terms of profit, the triple Ps, the profit, the people, the profits. It's going to set us into the right direction. That's where I emphasize of the growth Trinity model to apply in for the next generation.
Wow, Rachel. Thank you so much for this. I think this is important, and I think this is just so powerful for anyone. And for those who have not read the book, please grab yourself a copy of UNSHAKEN. Like, you get to learn so much from this. But I do have one last question. What are your thoughts? Because you're the digital IoT queen. But if I were to bring you to digital assets, crypto, which is what everybody's talking about it. Crypto is in a winter season right now. What are your thoughts about crypto? Do you see something that will have the sustainability in the next 10 years?
First of all, I must confess and declare that I'm not an investor, so I can be very neutral about that. So the first thing I always believe is I don't speculate, because speculation is just like betting, right? So having a sound mind, discerning spirit, to understand anything that's growing like a tree with a root, we need the foundation. If crypto is built on something that's in the system, speculation, of course it wouldn't be fruitful. However, something like potential, I'm not saying crypto or blockchain, but all this technology, including NFTs, got to solve a problem in the environment. I'm not saying NFT is another good growth engine. I'm just giving example.
Awesome. Look, disclaimer, she's not giving any financial advice, so please don't. And again, it's a pleasure to have you, Rachel. Once again, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure the audience will learn a lot from you. I look forward to your more exciting projects, second book perhaps, or, we will stay tuned to that. Thank you for listening to the Shift Podcast. If our content resonates with you, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe to our channel on all platforms that the podcast is on. Stay tuned for the next episode.